All right, get ready, because today we're diving deep into Indian football. Specifically, the Kerala Blasters FC and their passionate fan base, the Manjappada.
Sounds intense.
Oh, it is.
Okay.
You guys have given us some really fascinating source material.
Yeah.
The minutes
Yeah.
from a recent meeting between the Kerala Blasters and the Manjappada.
Oh, wow.
And let's just say it sounds like it was pretty explosive.
It's rare to get this kind of look behind the scenes
Right.
at the relationship between a club and their supporters. These minutes really reveal not just the issues,
Yeah.
but the raw emotions involved,
Yeah.
expectations, frustrations,
Yeah.
all that deep-seated desire to see their team succeed.
For those listening who might not be super familiar,
Right.
Kerala Blasters, they're a huge deal in Indian football.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
They've got a history, a massive following,
Yeah.
and this incredibly dedicated fan base, the Manjappada. I mean, imagine them as like the pulse of the club.
Yeah.
Their voice echoes throughout the entire stadium.
And this meeting was Manjappada's chance to sit down with the club's CEO, Avik Chatterjee, and really hold his feet to the fire.
Yeah.
They came with very pointed questions.
They did.
And they didn't shy away from challenging him.
You did not.
Oh.
This was not just a polite, Q&A session.
No.
We're talking fan protests.
Oh, wow.
Heated exchanges.
Yeah.
About trophies.
Yeah.
And even the mysterious future of the women's team. This meeting was packed.
Absolutely. I think what makes this deep dive so interesting is it's a story that resonates far beyond just the Kerala Blasters.
Right.
This dynamic of passionate fans and a club striving for success, and then those communication struggles.
Yeah.
You see it in football clubs all over the world. So by looking at this one specific case, we can really learn a lot about this relationship between fans and clubs globally.
So let's unpack this elephant in the room, shall we? That obsessed with trophies comment.
Right.
Now, the CEO previously made a statement saying that he wasn't, quote-unquote, obsessed with winning trophies. Now, I can only imagine how that sat with fans who live and breathe for those victories.
You really have to understand the psychological impact here. I mean, for fans of any team, but especially for fans of a team like the Kerala Blasters, who are still waiting for that major trophy.
Yeah.
The idea of winning silverware is a huge deal. It's a deeply ingrained part of their identity as supporters. So to have the CEO seemingly dismiss that,
Right.
it feels like he's dismissing their passion.
The minutes show that Manjappada went straight for the jugular and challenged the CEO head-on about this statement.
And he offered a clarification. He said his words were taken out of context. His argument was that he was focused on the long game.
Yeah.
He's got a systematic approach. He wants to professionalize the organization, raise the standards, and build a foundation for success that's going to last.
Yeah.
So, this path, it may not lead to immediate trophies,
Right.
but he feels it's the best way to ensure the long-term health of the club.
So it's like a delayed gratification kind of thing.
Yeah.
We're going to invest now and hopefully reap the rewards later.
Exactly. And, to be fair to him, he inherited a club that had a history of, let's just say, inconsistency.
Sure.
And he's trying to break that cycle.
Okay.
He wants to build something sustainable.
Right.
So that the Kerala Blasters are genuine contenders year after year.
So is this a smart strategy or just a way to kind of deflect from the lack of silverware in the cabinet right now?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And only time will tell.
Right.
I mean, on the one hand, you can argue that this long-term vision is exactly what the Kerala Blasters need to escape that boom and bust cycle. But on the other hand, fans are hungry for success now.
Yeah.
They've been patient, and they're tired of waiting.
Absolutely.
So it's a tough balancing act.
It is, and that's where the conflict really lies.
Yeah.
Because we all know that in football, results matter. And if the trophies don't start coming soon, then no amount of long-term planning is going to placate the fans.
Exactly. They need to see some tangible progress on the pitch to really buy into this long-term vision.
So it's a high-stakes gamble.
It is.
And the CEO's putting a lot of faith in this long-term approach.
He is.
But it remains to be seen whether that faith will be rewarded.
Let's hope so for the sake of the Kerala Blasters and their fans.
All right, so we've talked about this obsession with trophies controversy. But there's another issue that really highlights this tension between the club and its fans.
What's that?
The drama surrounding the training ground.
Oh, right.
So walk us through what happened.
So it seems like access to their training ground, the Panampally Nagar training ground, became an issue.
Yeah.
And they had to train somewhere else after the Durand Cup in 2024.
Okay.
This all stemmed from a government tender process, which on the surface just sounds like a logistical issue.
Right.
But the fans, they felt completely left in the dark about the whole thing.
And that lack of communication, it led to a public outcry, didn't it?
Yeah.
It's almost like trying to avoid quote-unquote leaks backfired in a major way.
It really did.
Yeah.
It created this atmosphere of secrecy.
Right.
Like, the club was operating without being accountable to its fans.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, especially today, we live in a hyper-connected world.
Totally.
Information spreads so quickly on social media.
Oh, yeah.
Clubs just can't afford to be opaque anymore. They need to be proactive, they need to communicate clearly, and they need to bring their fans along, even when the news isn't great.
I think what's really interesting here is that this isn't just about a training ground, right?
Oh.
It's about trust.
Exactly.
Or I guess the lack of it.
Yeah.
The fans feel like the club isn't being upfront with them.
Mm-hmm.
And that breeds suspicion and resentment.
Right. And it creates a sense that the club doesn't really value their input.
Okay.
And I think that's at the heart of a lot of the issues we're seeing here.
So how did the CEO address this training ground situation? Did he offer any explanation or apology?
He did offer an explanation.
Right.
He said that the club was trying to secure a long-term lease for the training ground.
Okay.
And that they were hopeful that the situation would be resolved soon.
So basically, we're working on it.
Yeah.
But did the fans buy it?
Well, the minutes suggest that there was still a lot of skepticism.
Yeah.
They've heard promises before.
Sure.
And until they see concrete action, that trust is going to be hard to rebuild.
All right, so we've got this obsessed with trophies comment.
Yeah.
We've got the training ground drama.
Yeah.
And you know what all of this is really pointing to is that the fans don't feel like the club is listening to them.
Right.
They don't feel like their voices are being heard.
Exactly. And that's a dangerous place for a club to be.
Yeah.
When the fans feel disconnected, it can create a toxic atmosphere, and that can impact everything from morale to match day attendance.
So the club's got a lot of work to do.
They do.
If they want to repair this relationship with the Manjappada.
Absolutely. They need to start by listening, and then they need to take action to address the fans' concerns.
Well said.
If they can do that,
Yeah.
they might just be able to turn things around.
Fingers crossed. Now, let's move on to another hot button issue that came up in this meeting. Recruitment.
Ah, yes. The never-ending debate about who's coming in and who's going out.
Exactly. And for Kerala Blasters fans, this has been a source of frustration for a while now.
I can imagine.
So, what were the specific concerns that Manjappada raised about the club's recruitment strategy?
Well, they had a few.
Okay.
First of all, they were disappointed with the domestic player signings. They felt like the club wasn't bringing in the quality of players that they needed to compete at the top level.
So basically not good enough.
Not good enough, yeah. And then secondly, they were frustrated with how late some of the recruitment decisions were being made.
Okay.
They felt like the club was scrambling to fill gaps at the last minute.
Right.
Instead of having a clear plan in place.
So reactive rather than proactive.
Exactly. And then finally, and perhaps most importantly, there was a sense that the club wasn't fulfilling the promises that they had made in previous seasons.
Right.
They had talked about building a strong squad capable of challenging for the title.
Yeah.
But the fans felt like those promises were just empty words.
So there's a history here, a feeling of being let down.
Absolutely. And that history is really fueling the current frustration.
So how did the club respond to these criticisms? Did they offer any explanations or justifications for their recruitment choices?
They did.
Okay, good.
They admitted that they had made some mistakes in the past.
Okay, so at least they're owning up to it.
Which is a good first step.
Right.
Acknowledging that you haven't always gotten it right is crucial for rebuilding trust.
Absolutely.
They also pointed to some recent signings.
Yeah.
Like Dusan Legator,
Okay.
who they believe represent a step in the right direction.
All right, so they're trying to assure the fans that things are changing.
Yeah. They emphasize that they're doing extensive scouting and research.
Okay.
So that's a sign, perhaps, that their approach to recruitment is evolving.
But are these genuine efforts or just more the same empty promises?
That's the big question, isn't it?
Yeah. I mean, I'm always a bit skeptical when clubs start talking about extensive scouting and research.
Me too.
It often feels like a way to deflect from the fact that they haven't actually signed anyone good.
Right.
It's easy to talk about doing your homework, but the real test is in the results.
Exactly. The fans want to see a squad that can compete. They don't care about the process.
Yeah.
They care about the outcome.
All right, so recruitment is a big issue.
Yeah.
But there's another, even more intriguing mystery surrounding Kerala Blasters.
Oh, what's that?
The future, or lack thereof, of their women's team.
Right, the elusive women's team.
So walk us through what we know.
So Manjappada, they raised the idea of the club restarting their women's team, which is, I have to say, a fantastic initiative.
It is.
It really shows their dedication not only to the club, but also to the growth of women's football in India.
But the CEO's response was incredibly vague, wasn't it?
Oh,
Just
yeah.
a cryptic, quote-unquote, you'll know very soon.
Yeah.
I mean, why so evasive? If something's in the works, why not share some details, generate some excitement?
It's hard to say for sure what his intentions were.
Right.
It could be genuine, maybe the plans are still being finalized.
Okay.
And they're not ready to make a formal announcement yet.
Right.
On the other hand, it could be a tactic to just appease the fans,
Yeah.
Offer a glimmer of hope.
Right.
But without actually committing to anything.
It's another instance where clear communication would have gone a long way.
Absolutely.
This wait-and-see approach.
Yeah.
Can really breed suspicion.
It can.
Especially given all the existing trust issues.
Right.
And I think this issue goes beyond just Kerala Blasters.
Mm-hmm.
It really reflects the broader context of women's football in India.
Yeah.
The sport is gaining momentum.
It is.
There's a real push for more opportunities for female athletes.
Absolutely.
And a club like Kerala Blasters, with its resources and fan base, could play a huge role in that movement.
They really could.
So their actions, or lack thereof, they send a powerful message.
They do.
And it will be interesting to see if very soon actually turns into meaningful action.
It will. It's definitely a situation worth watching closely.
So we've got the obsessed with trophies, the training ground issues,
Yeah.
the vague promises about a women's team.
Mm-hmm.
It seems like communication, or lack thereof, is a recurring theme here.
It definitely seems that way.
But there's another aspect of this meeting that really highlights the disconnect between the club and its fans.
Okay, what's that?
The fan protests.
Ah, right.
So paint us a picture of what went down.
So from the minutes, it's clear that the fans weren't just asking questions.
Yeah.
They were actively protesting. They used placards, chants, both inside and outside the stadium.
So this was more than just feedback.
It was.
This is a real manifestation of their anger and frustration.
Yeah, it was a cry for change.
And how did the club handle these very public displays of dissent?
There were some incidents that raised concerns.
Like what?
Security personnel were seen removing placards.
Oh, wow.
And there were even reports of police presence.
Really?
Trying to quell the protests.
So it sounds like the club was trying to silence the fans rather than engage with them.
It definitely created that impression. And naturally, it didn't sit well with Manjappada.
Yeah. I mean, you can understand why they would feel like their voices were being suppressed.
Absolutely.
It feels like a fundamental clash of perspectives.
Yeah.
Manjappada sees it as their right to express their discontent.
Yeah. And the club sees it as a threat to order and security.
So who's right?
Well, it's a complex issue, isn't it?
Yeah.
On the one hand, fans have a right to make their voices heard. Absolutely.
Even if those voices are critical of the club, peaceful protest is a cornerstone of fandom.
Right.
But on the other hand, clubs also have a responsibility to ensure safety.
Of course.
To comply with regulations and to protect their brand image.
So it's a delicate balancing act.
It really is.
And in this case, it seems like the club might have overstepped.
It's possible.
By trying to silence the fans, they might have actually made the situation worse.
Yeah, they might have inadvertently fueled the anger and resentment.
So what's the solution here? How can clubs balance fan expression with these legitimate security and logistical concerns?
Well, I think it starts with communication.
Okay.
Clubs need to be proactive in engaging with their fans.
Right.
They need to create channels for dialogue. And they need to be transparent about their decision-making processes.
So basically, open up the lines of communication.
Exactly.
And make the fans feel like they're part of the conversation.
Yeah.
Rather than just passive observers.
But it also requires a certain level of trust on both sides.
It does.
The fans need to trust that the club is listening.
Mm-hmm.
And the club needs to trust that the fans will express their concerns in a responsible way.
Yeah. It's a two-way street.
Well said.
If they can find that balance,
yeah,
then they might be able to avoid these kinds of confrontations in the future.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here, but don't go anywhere.
Okay.
We'll be back in a flash to continue our deep dive into the world of the Kerala Blasters.
Looking forward to it.
Welcome back to our deep dive into the Kerala Blasters.
As we're talking about all this, it's clear there's this communication breakdown between the club and the supporters.
Yeah.
Like they're speaking completely different languages.
Yeah, it's so fascinating how differently each side is perceiving the issue.
Right.
Manjappada feels left out. They feel like their voices aren't being heard.
Right.
Their concerns aren't addressed.
Yeah.
And that the club is breaking promises.
Yeah. But the club, they're insisting they're doing more than any other team in the league.
Yeah.
They're pointing to emails, meetings, proof of engagement.
So who's right?
I think it comes down to quality, not quantity. Are the fans actually getting the information they need?
Yeah.
Are their concerns being taken seriously or just brushed aside?
And this new fan advisory board, this initiative they're putting forward,
right,
is supposed to be a way to bridge the gap, to give fans a more direct voice.
On paper, it seems like a good idea, but Manjappada's response was pretty lukewarm. They didn't completely reject it, but there was a lot of skepticism.
Well, they've been down this road before, right?
Yeah.
Promises made, hopes raised, only to be disappointed.
It makes you think, what does it really take to rebuild that trust?
Yeah.
Consistent action, not just empty words. You have to show them, you have to demonstrate that their concerns are heard,
right,
and then you have to follow through on your commitments.
So basically walk the walk. Don't just talk the talk.
Right.
Another big talking point was the development of young players.
Yeah.
Manjappada's worried they're being thrown in too early.
It's a tough one, isn't it? When do you unleash the young talent?
Yeah.
Nurture them gradually or let them sink or swim?
So what's the club's take on this?
Seems like they favor the trial by fire approach.
Really?
They say opportunity is given based on merit, not age.
Okay.
They pointed to Koru Singh, who came up through the reserves, and he's made a positive impact on the first team.
So high risk, high reward.
Yeah. If it works, you've got a star.
Right.
But what if they crumble under pressure?
Exactly. It could really damage their confidence.
Needs to be a support structure.
Yeah.
Not just game time, but the right coaching, the right development programs, the right mentality.
Which actually leads us perfectly to the next point of contention.
Oh.
The coaching staff and the medical team.
Yeah, Manjappada had some pointed questions about that too.
They weren't holding back, were they?
No, they weren't.
Concerned about the reliance on interim coaches and the effectiveness of the medical team.
Especially with all the injuries.
Right. So let's start with the coaching situation.
Okay.
What's the story with this revolving door of interim coaches?
Well, the minutes don't really show a clear long-term vision.
Okay.
The CEO said he's happy with them. He said performance has improved, morale's up.
Oh, yeah.
The decision will be made at the end of the season based on results.
So they're keeping their options open.
Yeah.
But a permanent coach could provide so much stability.
Yeah, in an ideal world, that's what you'd want.
Right.
But it's a big decision.
Yeah.
Maybe this is just a way to assess different styles.
To find the perfect fit.
Right.
Let's hope so. And the medical team, those injuries are concerning.
The fans think it's more than just bad luck. They think there's something systemic going on.
So what was the club's response?
The CEO defended the team, said they were performing well, said every department is reviewed at the end of the season.
So they're standing by them for now.
Yeah.
But those injuries are going to keep piling up.
It's a real problem.
It is. And it's not just about the staff.
No.
It's the whole approach to fitness.
Absolutely.
Training loads, recovery strategies.
It all plays a role.
One thing that I found really interesting was the question of the coach's influence on recruitment.
Oh, right.
Manjappada's worried about a mismatch between the new coach's style and the players signed.
Makes sense, right?
Yeah.
The coach should have a say in the squad.
Exactly.
It's their job to get the best out of them.
So what did the club say?
They said all signings are made with the club's philosophy in mind. And they do consult with the coaching staff. But the new coach will have a chance to bring in players who fit his style.
So like a compromise.
Yeah, balancing the club vision with the coach's preferences.
But will it work in practice?
Good question.
Yeah.
Will the coach really have the freedom?
Right.
Or will he be stuck?
And Manjappada even brought up a previous coach star.
Right.
Who couldn't get the players he wanted.
It seems to be a recurring issue.
Yeah.
It's something they really need to address.
This meeting has been a whirlwind.
It has.
Finances, facilities, communication, coaching.
And we're not done yet.
Oh, right.
We still have to talk about the troubled turf.
The fungal infection.
Caused by a Faratanatyam event.
You can't make this stuff up.
It really is a strange story.
Stick with us as we wrap up this deep dive into the world of Kerala Blasters FC.
Okay, we're back for the final part of our Kerala Blasters deep dive, and we've saved the most unusual story for last.
The Trouble Turf.
The saga of the Trouble Turf.
It proves truth is stranger than fiction.
It really does.
So the JLN Kochi pitch, their home ground, it's battling a fungal infection.
A fungal infection?
Yeah.
How did that happen?
Because of a Faratanatiam event that was held on the field.
So not your typical opponent?
Not at all.
So for those listening who maybe aren't familiar with pitch maintenance.
How could something like a dance performance lead to this?
Well, a football pitch is a delicate ecosystem.
Okay.
It's not just grass.
Yeah.
You need the right soil, the right drainage, a specific type of turf that can handle all that running and kicking.
Right.
And fungi, some fungi, are naturally present.
Right.
But if that balance is disrupted, things can get out of control.
So too much foot traffic or something.
Yeah, or compaction of the soil.
Okay.
Or even the introduction of foreign organic matter.
So all that intricate footwork from the Partanacham event?
Exactly.
That could have tipped the scales.
It's possible.
I mean, we're not just talking about a few brown patches here, right?
No, a damaged pitch can have a huge impact on the game.
Really?
Yeah, think about it. The ball doesn't roll properly, passes go astray.
Oh, right.
Players are more likely to slip and get injured.
So it really changes the game.
Completely. It can even neutralize the home advantage.
I bet the Manjappada are not happy about this.
They're not. They want their team to succeed. And a bad pitch is not going to help.
So what are they saying?
Well, they want to know what the club's doing to fix it.
Right.
How long it's going to take. And if they're going to get any compensation.
So what did the CEO say?
He said they're working on it.
Okay.
But it's a slow process and full recovery. He said it's uncertain.
Oh, that's not good.
Not ideal.
What about the money?
Right. They did ask about compensation.
Yeah.
And the CEO said they're talking to the people responsible for the event.
Okay, so they're at least trying to recoup some of the costs.
Yeah, they're also spending a lot of money trying to save the pitch.
I mean, this whole situation just highlights the challenges these clubs face.
Right. It's not just about what happens on the pitch.
Exactly. You've got finances, facilities, fan relations.
Even the grass.
You got to think about the grass.
It all matters.
Well, we've covered a lot in this deep dive.
We have.
Fan protests, finances, coaching, even fungal infections.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. But I think what really stands out is the passion from both the fans and the club.
They all want the same thing.
They do. They want to see the Kerala Blasters succeed.
It's that shared dream that keeps them going.
Exactly. And it's what makes this story so fascinating.
And it makes you think, doesn't it?
It does.
If you were a Kerala Blasters fan, what would you want to see from the club going forward?
What would it take to restore your faith?
It's a question worth asking yourself.
It is. So until next time, keep diving deep, keep exploring, and keep the passion for the beautiful game alive.